Well, going to Loyola is kind of like growing up in a neighborhood and knowing the story of the haunted house down the street. Everyone here knows what happened in Sky. And the way it was told to me was that back when the building was built in 1931, there was a convent on the top floor. And there used to be a priest who would go up to take confession a little too often. And it was found out that one of the nuns that he would visit ended up getting pregnant by someone's hand. And so she ended up killing herself shortly after. I believe she hung herself. Then, going up there and seeing the dead body, the priest decided to hang himself too, to avoid the embarrassment and the shame of what would follow. Ever since then, they cleaned the room out, they've changed it, it's no longer a convent, but you'll notice to this day, no one's allowed on the top floor of Sky.
One of the main reasons I came to Loyola is because it's a Jesuit institution. But it seems like these Jesuits are completely disregarding the fact that Sky is haunted. The Old Testament speaks of angels, demons, Lucifer, and more. But where is that on this campus? Where do we hear that Sky is haunted?
The word ghost has such a folklorish attitude about it, it's not precisely defined. A spirit, one could say, is the soul, the human soul. And Christianity, Catholicism in particular, but all Christianity believes in the immortality of the soul. And we get that from the Greeks, that when the body dies, the soul is released from this mess of chemicals and hormones and organs, and the body decomposes, the soul lives on forever. But we also have from the Jewish tradition the idea of the resurrection of the dead. And the idea of a spirit, the ghost, probably comes better from the Greek idea of immortality of the soul. And there's more to it, of course, than even all that. Other traditions, other cultures have different forms of an afterlife. But I guess the bottom line is it has to do with the afterlife. What is it like when we die? Do we, in some sense, continue to exist? And I think the words that we use about spirit and ghost has to do with that question.
Yes, I do believe in ghosts and spirits, but I don't like thinking about them because it's, I mean, something exists, but what it is, I don't know, and I don't want to know, because it goes beyond rationality.
Well, I know there are philosophers who wouldn't really distinguish between a belief in ghosts and a belief in the existence of angels or any other sort of spirit. And so the same sorts of evidence that they'd appeal to for the existence of angels, I think a lot of people would say is the kind of evidence that leads them to believe in ghosts. I mean, certainly historically people have believed in such things as ghosts, and oftentimes those stories were part of folklore. I think most philosophers today doubt the existence of ghosts and question the evidence that those beliefs are based on. As Bertrand Russell once said, any explanation is better than no explanation at all. And so whenever you're faced with a mystery or a puzzle, you want some explanation for it rather than just sitting silently without an explanation. And so people venture an explanation in terms of occult forces sometimes when they have no adequate physical explanation.
Well, you know, Sky's a strange place. It's obviously a building at Loyola with a lot of history behind it. It's a building with a darker side than most of the other ones here. While being in Sky sometimes, you get this eerie feeling that you're not alone, even if no one else is in the building. You can walk down the hallway and the way your footstep echoes is almost otherworldly. I don't know how to explain it. But I recall one time I was on the green room on the 7th floor, and as I walked in, I distinctly heard another door open. I went and checked it out, but there was no one there. You get these things a lot in this building. The further up you go, I find that the stranger it becomes. The elevator, for example, only goes up to the 9th floor, but when you take the side stairwells further and further up and you see the areas that are blockaded off, and you find these strange things that really don't belong in a building, you wonder what's going on. I recall one time I was on the 10th, I was headed up to the top floor when I left the stairwell, and there was this woman who was just old with wrinkled skin and gray hair. It just looked like the skin was hanging off her. And she was gliding towards me with this intent look on her face. And I looked around and I was the only one there. So I just had this feeling of nervousness and I was getting scared and I wanted to know who this being was. How was she floating so gracefully at this age? But it just turned out she was a teacher. It was still terrifying though. Absolutely terrifying.
A very, very broad spectrum might suggest that I can believe in God and I might believe in spirits. We occasionally hear of people going to a fortune teller or to perhaps a seance. All of these in some ways seem to suggest that at our core, we human beings believe that those who preceded us in death still continue to be in ways we cannot explain or imagine. We find, it could be hubris, it could be pride, that we think we are so special that even when we die we cannot completely cease to exist. But it might also be that the great religions of the world have become utterly persuaded that this God who created us out of love and called us by name from our mother's womb before we were born out of love and sustains us every day in being out of love will not on the day we die say, okay, next, but that the same God will continue to sustain us in being. So it may not just be human pride that makes me think I will live after I die, but that I've tasted and experienced God's love and know that in the deepest fiber of my being, that this God who loves me will keep me in existence past the grave. And we don't know anything about that. So the story of spirits or ghosts or beings that hover make for a really good, fascinating narrative. But how do you prove it?
You see, as an expert in the field of paranormal activity and having absolutely no ties to this Loyola community, I can tell you the truth. Loyola is haunted. I've received reports from several reputable sources, all signaling the need for an exorcism. You see, Loyola has a serious problem on its hands. Based on my understanding of what happened on the top floors of this building, it all adds up. The ghosts, or spirits if you will, appeared to be angry, possibly trying to send a message from the grave. It's just a shame that this administration doesn't do something about it.
You know, I can understand Loyola's desire to open up the top floors, make a little more money, use a little bit more of its space. But in my opinion, opening up those rooms is asking for trouble. They know what they're going to get. The renovation of Sky is one of Loyola's efforts to actually fix this problem. But in my opinion, it won't work. There's only one way to solve this problem. And that's the same way to solve the problem with Damon. Just burn it to the ground, start all over.
I think it's about time that the Jesuits and the president of this university stand up and tell us the truth. That there are ghosts, there are demons, and there are angels in Sky. Why is it a big secret? What are they trying to hide from us? They're there. They're real.